and and we're the enterprise group for, well, we're going to say Dynamics CRM right now, but we're going to expand to other products as we go. But check out some of the other communities. We go to the next slide. It doesn't cost you anything to join. And you can find Business Central, customer engagement, CRM, finance and supply chain, Dynamics GP, Power Platform. And there's some specialty groups in here for marketers. So we're growing quite quickly, and you're going to meet some great people and have some sort of great communications and networking. And hopefully you'll come back and be part of our group and help out and volunteer and present in the future, and we can get this thing off the ground. This is only like our third meeting. So, when we have 200 or 300 people on this meeting and next year sometime, we won't be introducing everybody, but hopefully we can still find time to network. Okay, next slide. And there's some regional events happening if you're in the Northeast. One's coming up in Philadelphia on June 12th, Ohio in Columbus on August 27th. We're doing one in Canada for those I think it'll be in the Toronto area. We haven't landed a date on that, but we're planning that for August. And then there'll be the Southeast US and then Texas in the fall. So there's lots going on. And then I think the next slides are going to talk about Dynamics Con Live, which is our in-person event, May 13th to 16th, Denver Marriott Tech Center. I think there's going to be around 1,500 people there. So we're very, very excited about that conference coming up. And if you're there, make sure you let us know, and we'll meet you and say hello, and get to meet everybody face to face. So I'll be doing.
And I think Nancy and you were both presenting there. Is that not right, Rick?
Yep, yeah. I'm presenting there. Nancy's presenting there, and I think Will, you're going to be there.
I'm going to be there. I don't know if I'm presenting, but I'll be there for sure.
We'll find you something to do, Will. Being a data scientist and all, we can't let that go. All right, so let's go to the next slide, and then we've got Dynamics Con Live updates and announcements. I think we talked about everything here. If you want to go, use the meetup 15 code, and you get 15% off. All right, and then in Europe, 2 weeks after that, a few of us are heading over to Slovenia, and this is Dynamics Mind. So they're associated with Doug, and this is a conference about the same size. It's going to happen just about an hour and a half east of Venice, Italy, on the Adriatic Sea. It's supposed to be spectacular. It's in Portorož, Slovenia. So if you're in Europe and you can make it to this conference, by all means, all reports, this is absolutely a fantastic conference. So if you could make it there, we'll see you in Slovenia. All right.
And it is in English, this conference. Just we had that question before. So.
Oh, really? Okay, good. I'll learn a lot then. Okay, the next slide. And then Doug's Dynamics Con has a virtual event. It's going to be in the fall. I believe it's in November. And if you'd like to speak at that event, you can put a submission in now. It's open in April, started opening in April. And if you have a subject that you want to present on, please do. If you've never presented before and you're looking for some, help, by all means, you can, reach out to me, and I'll give you a little bit of advice on what you may want to do to be able to get your session picked. All right, so I think that's going to lead into our presentation, and I'm going to send it back over to Tanya.
Thank you, Rick. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to answer any questions about the broader Doug group. Our focus, again, is just Enterprise Center of Excellence. So that's why we're just newer to the game here. The Doug environment, the Doug group has been around for years. So we're just a newer group within there. So today we're going to take everybody through, again, we've already done some introductions, but the center of the focus today is on Copilot and a little bit into AI. I'm going to go through a number of items there. We will have Q&A. We are monitoring the chat, and we will send out the recording. So typically we post that on YouTube. So Don't worry about furiously scribbling notes or anything like that. You'll get a recorded session. And then we'll wrap up. We've scheduled an hour and a half for today. So I appreciate everybody spending their lunch hours with us, or your breakfast, I guess, out there on the West Coast. But thank you for joining us today, and let's get started. So you already heard a little bit about us, but if for those of you who've joined late, Will, why don't you just do a quick reintroduction if you don't mind?
Absolutely. It's great to meet everybody. My name is Will Hawkins. I'm an AI engineer and data scientist that's been in the Microsoft channel for about 3 years now. So I've worked across Azure, Power Platform, Dataverse, pretty much the whole Microsoft stack, doing different AI and data implementations. So yeah, I'm here to talk about Copilot.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. And again, Tanya Tigerson, I'm one of co-heads and senior directors of the CRM practice over at SS&C, specifically the Salentica division. And I have worked in the Dynamics CRM space since version 1 of the platform, and help a lot of our clients try to get the most out of the CRM, as well as that native ecosystem or other ecosystem products. So I've worked directly with clients for years and years, and really excited to present this topic and help again paint a picture of what's possible with the Dynamics platform. All right, so specifically what we're going to do today, we're going to kick things off with a little teeny tiny poll just to get a sense of your backgrounds. Then we'll take it through a Copilot overview, some best practices, a case study of a real project, some lessons learned, and then maybe looking at the future of Copilot. And again, please use the chat, ask some questions. Vonda will monitor it for us. So, sorry, everybody. All right, so there's a little poll here. You can grab that URL or that QR code, and this is a live poll, so we'll be able to see some interaction here. So we're just trying to get a sense of who's joining us today, and if you have a second, just take that poll. Awesome, we're getting some responses.
Can you please paste the link of the poll in the chat?
Yeah,
Sure.
just stick with me.
I'll put it in. I got it, Vonda.
Have you? Because I'm not able to grab it. It's a bit
Yep,
slow
I
my
got it,
side.
Vonda.
Thank you.
Awesome. So the first question is just, have you been involved with or created a Copilot project yet? There's looks like it's a heavy weighting of not yet. There's also a good portion that are planning to do it as well. And then, looks like some people have already gotten their feet wet, which is fantastic. I was expecting a big variety here. Next question is, what platform are you working on? So most of you here are Dynamics 365 or Power Platform. And again, as Rick mentioned, we will hope to expand into other parts of the Dynamics world, but thanks for joining us from the ERP space as well. And then just wanted to get a sense of where everybody's focusing. So lots of fintech, many generalists, that's awesome. And then a few of the others. So great, that's really helpful. Thank you everybody for participating in that one. That's awesome. Okay. All right, so let's dig in here. A little bit of Copilot overview. So Microsoft introduced Copilot, as you can imagine, and the focus of that was because there's a lot of digital debt out there, and there's a lot of software that people have and data that people have in so many different applications. So Microsoft said, we got to wrangle it in, and we want to increase productivity and focus on you as a human, do the human stuff. Technology can help you with the other parts. And so that was kind of the guiding principle for Copilot. It's been a long-awaited application for sure. So when you think about AI, and Copilot, it's meant to be your digital assistant to help make your Dynamics 365 experience more smoother, more efficient, and ultimately more productive. So you can think of it as having your little knowledge worker sitting right beside you that is lifting off all those tedious tasks off your shoulders to help you, just be more proficient and efficient in your day. So let's dig in a little bit more into when we say co-pilot, what do we actually mean, Will? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, sure. So it is obviously an AI assistant, but I think the key difference with it being a Copilot versus ChatGPT or other large language models and any other terminology you think of is that it's actually embedded within the Microsoft applications, right? I don't know how many people have played with ChatGPT. Probably everybody has heard of it at least at this point. And you have to go to that platform, you have to put in your prompts, you have to do everything there. Well, that's kind of why Microsoft took the Copilot approach of actually taking these capabilities and putting them right in your existing applications. And obviously that creates numerous benefits. Some of them are listed here on the screen with, it streamlining workflows using natural language. I don't know if anybody's tried the Power Automate Copilot yet, but that's obviously one where you can type in like, hey, I want this flow, and it can actually work on putting one together for you. And then I think the other really key thing is that it's really capable of accelerating the ability to pull information, right? You think about when you're in Dynamics and you're going through knowledge articles in your customer service hub, going through and figuring out which one you want to reference rather than that, actually having something that you can ask questions in your own words and get that information and find the sources in a much more streamlined way is another example of that embedded functionality. And then also, of course, there's using historical data. So I don't know how many people live in the Power BI space, but having Copilot connected to your Power BI data sets, reports, everything related there, allows you to get some suggestions, recommendations that reflect on all of the data that you have in your Dynamics environment and other things, because, as humans, it's really difficult for us to think about things over a very large stretch of time. So, if you have 10 years worth of data sitting there and clicking through it might take you another 10 years. So having something that can actually give you suggestions on the fly is really great. So yeah, that's, I guess, the overview of what we're talking about when we say Copilot.
Yeah. And it seems like Microsoft is bringing it to the masses versus keeping it for a technical audience too, right? It's actually opening up people's worlds to be able to kind of live in a pseudo technical world, but it is more accessible for non-technical people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you did mention Copilot or ChatGPT. So how does Copilot differ from ChatGPT?
Yeah, of course. I think maybe one like high level fact about ChatGPT is that a GPT is a fancy term for a specific kind of machine learning model. And that model is geared towards producing human-like text. That's the whole reason it exists. That's the whole reason that it's come to fruition. And so ChatGPT is really an AI model that's used to generate conversations. That's the whole point of why the platform initially was brought to market. And obviously Copilots are much different than that. It's actually, using that AI functionality, this AI innovation, to drive a lot of business value and just, make humans overall better at what they're doing, right? You can see there in the image, rather than needing to create a proposal from your meeting notes, you can have an AI generate that for you. And instead of sitting there trying to think of ways of creating that content, you kind of already have a base template that you can use to approach that. So yeah, really the main difference that I like to highlight is that, ChatGPT is just geared towards all kinds of human text, whereas Copilots are specialized AI tools that live in your apps and do things to work with those apps in a very specific way.
Yeah, perfect. And one of the Dynamics 365 little features with Copilot is if you use the timeline, Microsoft now has a timeline summary, which, as you can imagine, the timeline just grows and grows and grows with all the activity and notes that you throw into the Dynamics 365. There's a nice little Copilot now sitting on your timeline that will summarize your timeline for you, which is just game changing. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Will. All right. So then it sounds like ChatGPT is the family doctor, but Copilots are the specialists. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So you mentioned a couple different Copilots. There are tons of them, and we wanted to give everybody a visualization of this. So our goal, of course, with the Dynamics Center of Excellence here is looking at the Copilots only in sort of the modern work area or some of the business applications area, but you can see it's everywhere. And you cannot open a Microsoft application today without seeing Copilot. But Will, you have some examples here. Maybe do you want to talk about a little bit about the differences of the Copilots?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's kind of its own universe now. As you can see, there's many co-pilots, and they're all kind of geared towards tailoring the ability to maximize the productivity and capabilities within that specific application, right? You look at the Excel Copilot. When you go into Excel, you're there to do data analysis, create charts, do some kind of insights. And I think, you know, having a Copilot that's specifically designed for that is crucial, right? You have a very different approach to doing that than you do, say, writing a meeting summary or creating an email. And so having a different kind of Copilot that's geared towards that specific functionality is pretty critical. And the same thing with Power BI. You know, you're there to do something that's a little bit different than Excel. And, you know, the same thing, obviously, with Dynamics 365 Copilot. The different features that are in there are really geared towards, you know, stuff like suggesting the next best action for accounts and opportunities, or with the customer service case, being able to answer those cases a lot faster. And if we think about, you know, the point before with ChatGPT, like if you tried to ask ChatGPT to do all this stuff for you, it has no idea what to tell you other than what's on the internet. This stuff is actually within your application and does things for you.
Yep, and all looking at your Dataverse too, right? Like that's the
Yes.
critical component here is quality data in will give you quality help out with Copilot, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. I think we're going to need a PhD course on all these Copilots. There's a lot to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so just specifically looking at one of the examples, just Copilot for Outlook, Will, maybe talk to us a little bit about just some of the standard values. And I know it's probably pretty commonplace more and more for a lot of the audience today, but what's kind of some of the value you see Copilot for Outlook, for example?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, it sounds like we have a pretty diverse audience, and I'm sure maybe you don't live in Excel, maybe you don't live in Power BI, but you probably use email. I think that's a pretty fair assumption. So if you think about what you're doing in email, you have tons of things to respond to. You have lots of information living in one place, and you have things that you need to take away and do outside of Outlook, right? And so that's kind of where these functionalities specific to Outlook are critical, right? Rather than sifting through emails, you have Copilot look through your inbox for you, as well as draft replies, create different templates for emails for you so that you don't have to sit there and write out the same thing over and over again. And then also being able to find those action items for you and provide that list for you, right? That's part of the value proposition of it being in Outlook specifically, is that it's geared towards what you're going to be doing in that platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, looping in the Dynamics 365 application to that, as you know, there's that nice integration with the Outlook and the CRM app in one experience. And now with Copilot doing the heavy lifting of your authoring of emails or task prioritization, then tracking those into the CRM, you're going to get really nice quality activity tracking in the CRM just because they're all nicely intertwined and combined. And so I'm seeing a lot of clients use Copilot in Outlook, and then as they would have before, they're still tracking those emails, for instance, into the CRM, but now it's better quality content. It's better quality responses and proactive, and you're not missing anything. And so they still continue to have that nice integration, but it's the quality that is going to be improving. And then back to that comment about the timeline summary, it's all fitting little steps of how to improve your overall efficiency in your organization. So it's really nice to see the flow through and the real world usefulness of this today, and it's available today. So I think it's fantastic. All right. So we've talked about the different co-pilots. We've talked about a couple examples, but really, like, why do different co-pilots actually exist, Will?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I think the specialization idea that's here, I think most people can kind of get a feel for, you know, as we've been explaining with, you know, using different co-pilots for different kinds of functions, like in Dynamics 365 or Outlook or Excel, having that specialization is critical. It allows you to actually tailor the specific AI functionality to a more specific task or outcome or whatever it may be, right? You think about, for example, in Power Platform, if you're trying to make a new app, you are going to be completing a specific group of tasks, and having a co-pilot that's geared towards helping you with those tasks is going to make the experience a lot better, which is obviously why the user experience part is a large part of why different co-pilots exist, because how you interact with you know, SharePoint is different than how you interact with Word. So those are the key, I think, front end aspects of things. And then there's the back end, which is the infrastructure and the performance. One thing that I've found with a lot of different AI projects is when you're trying to rope in one Copilot or one AI assistant to do more and more and more things, it makes it harder for it to complete each one of those things, because obviously it's spreading over a wider surface area, and then it, you know, it just has a struggle to do that, and that obviously impacts the performance, and managing the actual Copilot from a back end perspective becomes extremely difficult. So having those specialized ones, having those ones that are geared towards specific people, functionality, that's a really important thing.
Perfect. All right. And it looks as we would imagine, like these are all, a number of these Copilots are obviously live, but they're continually improving, and you can see there's a lot of integrations coming soon for further applications. So this diagram will continue to evolve and change, but it's fascinating to see just the real world, what's available today, and how come that just the broad diversity of these integrations, these applications. So it will continue to get better. And that really kind of solidifies the value and the power of the Microsoft platform, and just the constant investment that Microsoft makes into improving this platform and the interconnectedness of the platform. There isn't another platform out there that has this breadth and depth in products. So it's not going to change. It's going to continue to get better. So, all right. Thanks, Will, for that. So that leads to the next kind of really interesting aspect of Copilot, is this big need for role-based Copilots, because no two workers are the same, just like no two Copilots are the same, because of the underlying chassis that they have to adapt to. So there is a really critical path here for role-based Copilots. Can you walk us through the value and the why, basically, of role-based Copilots?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as it's put there, it provides the ability to tailor that Copilot to specific job functions, right? And I think the reason that Microsoft took that approach is because, as we have seen in the evolution of knowledge work as a sector that we're all participating in, you know, there's a lot of different hats that you have to wear on a regular basis. And so having, you know, all of those responsibilities requires a specific kind of tool belt, right? You know, the data architect versus the business analyst use completely different methodologies for different things, because they have to serve very different purposes within an organization. And so that's part of the approach of having the role-based Copilots, right? It's much easier for different people to adopt different Copilots that are geared towards them, right? If you're a salesperson, for example, if you have a specific sales Copilot, then you're not as concerned about, you know, trying to figure out how to use it, because it's geared towards what you're trying to achieve already.
Yeah.
And that obviously goes with the richer context, right? In the sales example, you know, you need to be able to look at leads in your CRM. You need to be able to analyze opportunities. And so having a Copilot that's specific to that role kind of brings that context in with it, so that it's not something that you need to bring to the table. And this obviously goes hand in hand with the efficiency and accuracy, because when all those things are working together in a smooth format, then, you know, you're obviously able to achieve a lot more with things. And I think the biggest takeaway for that, when it comes to the role-based aspect, is that it's about customization, right? Having these things tailored for specific job functionality allows individuals to get the most out of the experience, right? If we think about going back to ChatGPT, when you're sitting there and explaining everything that you do and all the context and everything like that, you know, that's all the stuff you have to think of out of your head to just get it started. And then that has to happen throughout an entire conversation. Whereas if you find that there's one that's already geared towards your customer service agents, then you just have to get that. You don't have to sit there spending a bunch of time teaching it how to interact with you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you said it too. It just allows, it democratizes Copilots to be very focused on the worker, the human aspect of the world still today, and just really how the companies operate. But it allows those people to also focus on more strategic work, like focus on what needs to be done versus the mundane that you have to get done, and the Copilot will help with that. So it's really critical to have these role-based Copilots, and again, democratizing just the use of it. Okay. So we thought we'd share a few stats, as we always want to kind of keep you posted on just how things are looking in the real world. And so we went to a site called WorkLab. It just tells us a little bit of, you know, early kind of results on Copilot. And the stats are pretty positive in terms of the feedback of Copilot and what the perception is of them. So they surveyed a slew of developers, and they said it's significantly improving their productivity. As Will can attest to, it's he's mentioned a few things like Copilot and Power Automate. It'll build it for you. Where in the old days is literally last 5 minutes ago. But in the old days, you'd have to write every line of your Power Automate. Now you just ask it to do something for you. It is game changing. So I absolutely understand and see that 88% of surveyed folks saying it's just improved productivity in the development space. When you look at some other sort of CSAT kind of scoring, so 74% of people surveyed are focusing on more satisfying work. So again, a lot of us have to do very mundane stuff all the time. Copilots are allowing you to get away from that and focus on stuff that actually does give you more satisfaction as a worker, which to me as a hiring manager at my company, this is game changing as well, to say, I want to take that mundane stuff out of people's radar and give them something that challenges them and makes them want to stay with our company and really lets them focus on this really, really satisfying work. So this is really showing a lot of optimism here. And then, you know, just generally speaking, people are doing things faster. And so not in significant numbers either. So it's a pretty impressive first foray into just like how is Copilot actually making people more productive, more creative, saving time. And again, it's in all aspects of a company, which is absolutely incredible. So Will, you have anything you want to add there?
I just think, you know, the key thing when it comes to the impact of Copilot is not necessarily the functionality. I think it's more just the burden it takes off of the human operator. And we're going to talk about that a bit more in a bit. But you know, the idea that, you know, these little things that might take people 3 hours to do in a day, like find information, can be done in 5 minutes by a machine. Just allows them to have the space to do the things that they're actually good at, like make decisions, create things, and just, you know, do critical thinking activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Which leads us to sort of like the whole adoption thing is, where do we see that? So what is the adoption of the impact of adoption on Copilot and say Dynamics 365? And so these are actually Microsoft stats. So Microsoft, as you all might know, is, you know, drinking their own champagne with Copilot. They have released Copilot into their service model, their sales model. And these are stats from their own staff, Microsoft support engineers, for instance, just talking about the impact of Copilot to their service. So there's been a noticeable 12% reduction in the average customer case handling time. That's, again, using Dynamics 365, the service area with Copilot, and it's helping the support agents reach in and see data better, be able to quickly respond to customer cases. So there's been a pretty good reduction in average handling time. And then another big aspect, I'm sure anybody that is a Microsoft partner in here or anybody that's had to deal with Microsoft support is, how many people do you get punted to just to solve your question? So there's been a noticeable reduction, at least 10% at this point, of cases getting resolved independently without that agent having to pull in colleagues or escalations and so on. So a nice start to case management and case handling with the integration of Copilot into their customer service space. And then in the sales side of things, they've also reported from their sales teams that you know, there's a significant increase in being able to complete one or more tasks faster. So an 85% mark on that one is pretty good. And then 70% of the surveyed sales engineers or sales folks have reported in vast improvements in productivity, which means as a company, if your closing rates are faster of your opportunities and your tickets, that is amazing customer service, and it gets you faster to revenue. So we can't ignore Copilot in any of our businesses anymore. So, Willie, anything you would else add in there?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. All right. So I thought I'd play you a little video of Microsoft drinking their own Kool-Aid because I think it is absolutely incredible. So let me just get this going here.
There's nothing like solving a problem that just feels a little bit unsolvable. The scale of our business obviously is an incredible opportunity and quite a challenge. 1 billion consumers and millions of small and medium enterprises and 10,000 of the biggest customers in the world. As we started our journey, we had over 16 different case management platforms. Any one individual was using hundreds of tools. We had complexity that made our support engineers' lives more difficult. We knew that Dynamics was capable of that kind of scale. We also felt there was an incredible opportunity for us to really demonstrate that to the market, to our customers, and to ourselves.
One of the ways in which D365 really helps our engineers is by consolidating different tool sets into what we call a single pane of glass.
One of the single biggest asks from all of our support engineers was get me consistent tools.
The ability to have everything in one location made their lives a lot easier.
We've seen average handling time reduce. We've seen first call resolution increase. We've seen our customer satisfaction continue to improve. Consumer cases be able to be solved minutes faster. Commercial cases often hours or even days faster.
The thing I'm most excited about is how we are bringing AI, specifically in the form of Copilot, into that single pane of glass.
It's called Copilot for a reason, because it sits right next to us and helps us do the things that we need to offload.
It does the things that the engineers don't want to spend their time doing.
We don't necessarily have to do all these things that are massively administrative and heavy. Maybe we get to go a little bit deeper into a technology that we didn't necessarily have time for before. Copilot's incredibly powerful at letting us do what you can imagine. We're stepping into a whole new universe of what's possible and what's actually something that we can do right now.
The customer is able to provide their intent. We're able to determine that intent. We're able to put it into the system in a way to route it to the right engineer. That engineer is then able to pull that information up on the screen, and leveraging Copilot, they're able to get a good summary and bring knowledge in about the issue that the customer is reporting.
Federating in rich knowledge in the context of the case, given the customer's problem, and putting the right information at the fingertips of a support engineer. Things that we were not capable of doing yesterday become possible now.
All right. So the goal of just sharing that was just really just looking at a real world scenario of a massive organization taking advantage of Copilot. So anyway, I thought it was a really interesting case study. But sometimes Copilot doesn't do what you needed to do off the shelf. So the good news is Microsoft has also come up with a solution for that. And they have a product called Copilot Studio. And so that's where people like Will are your best friends, because they can help you take standard and make it your own. So building your own custom Copilot. So Will, do you want to take us through, Copilot Studio and, just the nuts and bolts of that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I know we talked about the role-based copilots, and obviously those are great, but they're kind of static. Obviously, John Smith and Jane Smith may do the same thing, but they don't work the same way. And so, having all of these different responsibilities that are dynamic and changing consistently over time, what do you do if what comes out of the box when you buy these different copilots isn't enough? And that's kind of where the Copilot Studio platform comes in handy. This is the newest iteration of Power Virtual Agents, if that's something that anyone has come across before, with a key focus on specifically generative AI. And so what's now the case is this Copilot Studio platform is essentially a low-code canvas builder. So you can go in, you can put all of your data from Dataverse into your Copilot, and kind of just quickly upstart in terms of building your own Copilot. You can set up specific escalation paths, connect it to other data sources, connect Power Automate flows to it. Basically anything that you're trying to achieve with AI in the Power Platform and Dataverse, you can probably do with Copilot Studio. And I think the most important thing about it as a as a developer is it cuts your cost of development and time spent working on bugs and just overall creating something very quickly. Like it can reduce that by days, if not weeks as well. And you also have the advantage that it lives within the Power Apps solution template. And so getting those copilots out after you create them is pretty simplified.
Yeah. And when you look at it from the technical debt legacy that every company has, again, one of the goals with Copilot is to reduce that debt, right? And so having Copilot Studio as a pre-baked solution is not a billion lines of code is generating that for you. So that technical debt is cleaner. It's not as invasive as it was in the old days, it sounds like, Will, and it's just sort of like optimizing your technical debt, really, right? It's sort of taking what you used to have to deal with, and then you'd have turnover on your teams and nobody has the right documentation of how did Will build this in the old days. Now with Copilot Studio, I sense that is a game changer for just companies that are continually building on their technical debt load, and this will actually change that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like kind of, I guess what I was alluding to with the reduction in the cost of the development time, it's a lot of the infrastructure is handled within what already exists in Dataverse and Power Platform, right? So
Yeah.
rather than needing to look for documentation on how they put together the specific environment to build the Copilot and also be able to find all the lines of code in GitHub or whatever to figure out what actually needs to be developed, all of that just lives in one place. And I think that's a huge advantage when it comes to getting stuff into market or connecting it to existing opportunities, is that, you're not spending all that time moving laterally to find all the information you need to go forward with the development.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So with any new tool, feature, anything, there's always going to be challenges. So what do you see are the challenges with implementing Copilots, Will?
Yeah, of course. I've got a few listed here. I think the biggest one, and I'm sure Lance can attest to it as somebody that works with machine learning models, just overall data management and data estate planning is a really key aspect of any kind of AI implementation, especially with copilots. If you don't have your stuff organized effectively, you don't understand the levels of access, who has access to what, and creating that ability to monitor the sensitivity of certain things, that goes right into your Copilot, right? I mean, the expression of garbage in, garbage out is really critical in this space because, I've worked with clients that think AI is kind of magic and that it just solves things on its own, and it doesn't. It really just uses the information that you have available to it. So if that is lacking, then of course the Copilot is going to lack as well.
Yeah.
And then I think being really clear on the definition of what the Copilot is responsible for, right? Because I don't know how much of you have experience doing prompt engineering, but you can tell the Copilot to do X, Y, and Z, but if you're not very specific about what you expect in return, you may find that it doesn't produce the results that you want. And that happens a lot with clients of mine where, they may say like, I want it to do, X, Y, and Z for a really arbitrary example, and it might end up doing it different than what they expected it to. And that comes down to being able to define, this is what I expect from my Copilot, and this is exactly what the output should be.
Will, perhaps
yeah.
just before you go further, Lance has got his hand up. I don't know, Lance, if you want to come off mute and pose your question. Thank you.
Yeah. I was interested in the idea of legacy code turnover, meaning, let's say the scenario is that there's a large chunk of software source code that new people are asked to maintain and improve. Does Copilot help new people get acclimated to some source code that's in a repository somewhere?
Yes, so not Copilot Studio specifically. That's more the GitHub Copilot, which is the developer one. So I've actually had that case with a client of mine where they used it within their Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. to basically plug into a repository and understand the code better, and also understand the context of like, okay, what does the feature development look like, and what do you actually need to assess within this code base. So does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, because I see it as analogous to the scenario Tanya was bringing up, where she was talking about technical debt and the standpoint of can't find information in our corpus, some documentation somewhere. And so we have the same issue as well in source code. All right.
Yeah. And Lance, I don't know if you remember seeing that big wheel of all the co-pilots. One on the top right has a GitHub on it. So so as Will was mentioning, it's the co-pilot for GitHub that is probably the one that you might be interested in. So
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that.
okay, perfect. All right, Will, what's next? You got some integration complexity?
Yeah, just I guess to finish off the points, when it comes to just overall AI projects and co-pilots, having the AI capabilities within the existing business application can be challenging, because you need to mix it with existing workflows, right? So knowing how that AI or co-pilot is going to work with your existing products, your existing solutions, whatever it may be, that's something that is a really key challenge for organizations, because when you have something that's already baked, you may lose track of exactly where the process could benefit the most from the co-pilot, right? I think it's easy to just say, okay, we're going to throw it in here and see what happens. But if you actually spend time analyzing your solution or code base or process to actually think through where does this fit best, that's a really key thing that I think I've watched organizations struggle with a little bit. And then just to kind of finish it off, the actual AI and Copilot functionality is just one slice, right? You have so many other aspects when it comes to the data streams, connecting to APIs, user authentication. All of that stuff needs to be considered within the Copilot framework. And so that's where building that loop becomes really critical. And we'll talk more about it in some future slides, but just remember that it's only one slice of the pie. You need to make sure all other pieces also work together to produce a good solution.
Yeah. So that's a good layup for best practices. Like that in itself is a best practice too, or sort of a guiding principle. So let's move into some best practices with Copilot. So now we kind of have the preamble. We know high level, there's lots of Copilots, there's lots of need for them, but before you tackle anything, you want to make sure that you're intentional about your Copilot project. So can you take us through, we've only identified a couple, but we'll just mention number 89. I'm sure you've heard a few of them through here, but we've highlighted a couple here. So Will, you want to talk about some of the best practices that you have actually, lived and breathed as well in your Copilot projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many like rules of thumb or attributes to consider and different things, but I selected these three because I think they're really kind of the root of where a lot of these ones stem from. And this goes to, lots of different customers that I've had where, the journey could have gone a lot smoother, I think, if these specific elements were put into implementation. So the first one, in terms of properly identifying the pain points, kind of what I alluded to a bit earlier, when you're trying to assess where AI and Copilot fits into an existing application, an existing workflow, you kind of have to start with where the actual problem is, right? Because yes, you have data, yes, you have AI, you can just plug them together and maybe something will happen. But you think about the case of customer service Copilot, you kind of have to see that, oh, okay, my agents are struggling with finding the right information. Why are they struggling with finding the right information? Well, all the knowledge articles are super disorganized. Well, maybe that needs to be addressed before we even think about putting a Copilot in this situation, because it's only going to struggle with the same thing. And that's kind of the second point that I think is really important. When you've actually gone in and really evaluated, like, oh, here's the gaps in what's currently happening. Like, this is why this process is inefficient, and this is why it's causing my operators headaches, why it's creating difficulty for the people in my organization. If you actually approach it from the lens of, okay, let's go in and like figure out how to redo this process so that everybody's happy with what the ideal workflow looks like. And then look at, where does AI fit into that? So an example might be, maybe you have a project manager that, you know, has to deal with the expenses for their team. Well, rather than, you know, let's say they go in and they look through the spreadsheet of expenses that are submitted to them and they go line by line to see, okay, which ones are ones that I should, you know, have a further conversation with them. Well, the problem with that isn't necessarily that, you know, an AI can do it faster than the person. The person's just doing it in a pretty inefficient way. Like, it would make a lot more sense to have them just look for the items that they know don't agree with the criteria for expenses that are submitted, and then teaching that to Copilot, right? That's where you get the, you know, the not only putting AI into the mix, but mixing it with the process that's been re-engineered. And so that kind of all goes hand in hand with, obviously, still including the human in the loop, because they're there to really amplify the entire value of the loop, because the Copilot is there to, of course, handle a specific functionality and probably do it at light speed in comparison to the human operator, but some kind of human needs to be involved in, just not only for governance and access and security and stuff like that. But I think one example that I find really helpful in this case is the collaborative learning that you would undergo with the Copilot, right? So for example, in healthcare, they have surgeons that work with AI that are looking at tumors in brains, and the AI might be there to pick up the tumor faster and more accurately, but the human is also learning the pattern that the AI is using to achieve that. And then it becomes a more collaborative loop, and then you're actually creating a kind of a synchronization between the both of them to produce a better outcome overall, and not just having AI do everything that the human did before.
Yeah. Yep. So AI is not going to replace human beings. That's the key here, right? So, all right, let's keep moving along here. So how would you get started with Copilot? So just take us through kind of the basic steps, Will, if you don't mind.
Of course. So yeah, I mean, the first one obviously is conducting an assessment. I think in every case that I've explored thus far, you know, like I said, in identifying those pain points, like actually going through and figuring out what is this, where does this kind of fit in with what's going on within my organization. So just, you know, having an overall look at what processes don't work, why do they not work, and could Copilot actually fit into that situation? And if you want to go ahead to the next point there, I think that goes really well with consulting with AI experts, you know, like myself and others that have a data science background or an AI engineering background, because when you've kind of brought to us the idea of here's the process, here's the problem, here's where we think AI and Copilot could be a solution, that is going to make that transition all the more smooth, because sitting there and ideating is definitely something that I can help you with or that can be done. But when you actually have stuff that leverages your own expertise and brings that to the technology, that makes the process a lot smoother. And then, you know, the other really big thing is just getting into pilot projects, whatever size that looks like for you and your business. It doesn't have to be large. It can be just a really tiny demo, but identifying what that looks like. So characterizing the who, the what, the where, the why, and how that kind of fits with something that's important within your existing business and your existing business applications is really like probably the ideal way to get started. And then, of course, there's all the Microsoft resources that are available to you. There is a Center of Excellence adoption guide that I'm sure we'll be able to put in the chat for you, that will kind of just go over, you know, how do we start getting ramped up with this stuff? What do you need to know about the products? What do you need to consider when doing different kind of implementations and stuff? Because there's lots of licensing that goes with this stuff as well. So yeah.
And there's tons of Microsoft events, and we're going to post a few at the end here of just how do I get traction with my company or with myself? Like, how do I keep learning this stuff? There's tons of Microsoft events. So, all right.
Yes, and there's obviously the AI Learning Hub as well. I mean, anything on Microsoft Learn will definitely help you understand not just the products, but overall AI and how it kind of works. Like I've learned most of the stuff about AI through the Microsoft Learning Hub. And, you know, I feel like it's a great place to just get your own understanding, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're getting ready to get started with Copilot. Now let's transition to an actual project. If you can just, in a few minutes, just to walk us through a real project that you did with a client. We changed client names just so you see some names on here. We changed the real client names, but this is actually a real case study from a real project that Will took some clients through.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of set the stage for things, I had a client of mine, an ISV, reach out to me saying that they needed help with some AI and Copilot expertise. And the reason was they had their own customer for their product that was probably a pretty large enterprise, over 10,000 employees. And they were really struggling with having their field operators have access to the information that they needed. And so the customer came to my client and said, is this something that you guys are planning to include in your product? And they reached out to me and said, what would the process be in terms of actually including an AI or a Copilot in our existing product, or how could we offer this as a service to help them manage their knowledge for field operators a lot better? So that's kind of what led into the conversation. If you want to go ahead through this next stuff here, I kind of already explained what it was meant with all that. I guess the one other key thing is that the client that I worked with, we're building on the Dynamics 365 Dataverse and Power Platform. So they already had an existing solution in the market that was more about enhancing with different AI capabilities. So I was brought in to help enable that.
Okay, and so you took them through some options. So you didn't just land right away on Copilot. You took them through some options. So option one.
Yes. So as a starting thing, one of the key things that we looked at was, can you just do this with open source software, like using packages, which are just chunks of code that you can embed within applications, looking at the LangChain, OpenAI, and Hugging Face, which are the logos that you see there. They're kind of the most prominent organizations in producing SDKs or software development kits for enabling AI within organizations. So that was the first option we looked at. I'm going to go over a little bit of the pros and cons of that in a sec, but let's flip through to the next option, which is obviously Azure OpenAI. That's where I started in Azure AI services and working within the cloud AI environment. And creating a custom Copilot there is definitely an option as well. So we looked through that to see, does this work with their current infrastructure? They had Azure capabilities, so could this be the best option? And then the third one was, like we discussed a bit earlier, was that Copilot Studio, being able to implement custom Copilots using the Dynamics 365 Power Platform and Dataverse. So these were the options that we kind of explored over a period of time to see which one made the most sense. And here were the results essentially. So with the open source option, it just had too many security risks. There were a lot of complications with trying to manage the code base because with the software development kits that I mentioned, they're changing all the time. And so when those change, it can really impact the ability of the solution. And there's a lot of these independent services that you may have to buy an API key for or buy a license to, and that can result in a high cost of maintenance. Azure AI Services obviously reduces that security risk. The interconnected Azure services is really great. And I think for a lot of production applications, this is the best option. But in this case, the infrastructure was just too complicated to manage. You're having to fire up an AI service for this and infrastructure service for this, and a lot of configuration that can make the organization of the data super messy, the deployment super messy. And then also, you have to set that up as a place for customers to go to rather than installing it in their own environment, which is another reason that we chose Copilot Studio. It's low code, reducing the maintenance of that code base. It lives within the Power Platform and Dataverse, so the infrastructure problem was solved pretty radically. And then also with all the data living in Dataverse, rather than putting it to Azure to put it back into Dataverse, it just reduces a lot of that data duplication. And then, like I mentioned, you can install it right within the customer's environment so that they can kind of manage it themselves, and you don't need to be responsible for the upkeep of the product the same way you would if they needed to log in and do everything within your infrastructure. So that's why we ended up picking Copilot Studio.
Perfect. So you're able to use Copilot Studio to collect all this disparate information from Northwind's Dataverse or intranet or any other place that I'll have all these policies and procedure guides, and throw them through Copilot Studio to give them standardization basically for their field staff, right? So there's no more like risk of somebody following incorrect procedures. So it addresses a compliance issue. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? It kind of, all the information was living in Dataverse or SharePoint, or if it was living in a third-party API, that was okay too. But it was really about centralizing that information so that
Yeah.
field operators could open up their teams and reach out to a co-pilot and just say, like, what's our company standard operating procedure for this? And without having to sift through 300 pages of documentation, they can
Yeah.
get that answer relatively quickly.
Yeah, and I can imagine as a new employee, how much of a relief that is to be able to do something like that versus being put in a room to read a 300-page manual, right? Like it's just, it's such an amazing opportunity for a company to offer this to employees. And to me, it would be, if I'm looking for a job, I might ask the firm that questions, like, what do you do to support my onboarding? What tools are you doing? Are you using modern tools to help onboard? It's a challenge for every firm. So I think this is a really timely and an incredible case study to say you've actually solved a real world problem that affects every firm. So, okay, so we have a couple lessons learned just really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are probably the main takeaways from that project and all of the other ones that I've been involved in is just you don't need to rush into anything. I think really sitting down and designing the AI future that you want is really critical because I think the technology, as we've all seen, has matured and it matures in waves as well. So I don't think there is any urgency other than that it is a really great thing to include in the solution. Doing research is really critical. I remember when I first started with some of my early clients, they were showing me all the scams on the internet of people using different AI solutions that didn't really do much. So definitely make sure you do your homework on different things. Again, cleaning up your data is probably the most critical thing you can do for any AI initiative. And then familiarizing with the concept of Microsoft Copilot Stack. I can send you the picture for that, or we can find it at some point. But knowing where you need to go within the Microsoft AI services, because as I showed with the Azure versus Copilot Studio, maybe Azure just isn't the best fit. Maybe you should start with Power Platform because it works for that scenario better. And then following the experts, so Charles Lamanna, hopefully everybody knows that's a pretty great source of information. Jan LeCun is a really famous data scientist that also provides really great insight. Andrew Ng, same thing. Fei-Fei Li as well. And Tobias Zwingman is somebody that I've worked with closely and provides a lot of insight on just generative AI as a whole. So I can definitely provide the information to find those people.
And we've been posting a lot of links, by the way, everybody. If you haven't been looking at the chat, like all of these names he just rhymed off and a lot of the links, just make sure you look at the chat and grab all those links before you peel out. So we have a few more lessons learned for you.
Yes. And so I think, the other big thing is with it being a new technology and taking your time with things, you can really think about, what is the way to monetize this, right? As we mentioned with the custom copilots or extending existing copilots or even reselling copilot licenses, these are all things that should factor into how you choose to approach AI within your organization, right? This is a new universe and explore it in the way that works best for you and your organization, because there's lots of different ways to monetize this stuff. And then of course, keep your ear to the ground. We're going to talk about a few events that are coming up related to the Microsoft AI universe, but they have stuff coming out almost every day. So don't worry about drinking out of the fire hose. That's my job. But definitely, if there's things that you're curious about or want to know if it can do this or that, either reach out to me or just look into things because Microsoft has so many great resources for that. And then one other really key thing when it comes to AI projects is bring all of the stakeholders to the table. I can't say this enough because it's happened with so many different clients that I've worked with. You need to have everybody involved in the project that is going to be impacted by the project. For
Top to
example,
bottom.
yeah, exactly. Like I had a project that I did years ago with a global supply chain conglomerate. And, as the AI scientist or data scientist or AI engineer, I had to spend, 3 to 5 hours a day, talking with subject matter experts to understand their process so that I could actually go ahead and build a solution. So without those stakeholders, I'd have no idea how to put AI in a supply chain that big or with that many variables involved. So that's a key thing to think about. And then, the most important thing I found with any AI project is that there are two things that drive success. It is lessons and momentum. Fail early, fail often, fail fast, and use all of that information to just keep propelling yourself forward.
Awesome. Okay. I know we're drinking from the fire hose with this whole webinar, but the goal is to really download our brains to you guys. So we talked a little bit about how to stay in the know. So again, there's a couple of upcoming events. We already mentioned the Dynamics Con There will be sessions on obviously in the dynamic space on this stuff. There's Microsoft Build is coming up. There is also a virtual option, but if you're happen to be out in the Seattle area, it's next month. Those are pretty fun events to go to as well. So hopefully you can make it out there. And then we thought we'd just provide a few websites to follow. So Microsoft Fabric, Project Sophia. And then, of course, if you're in the Dynamics world, you cannot escape the wave release documentation. You need a co-pilot to actually summarize it for you because it's just so huge. But so those are some, tips just to stay in the know here. So we thought we'd put it all together for you in a nice little chart here, is just where we came from through today. So Will, do you want to just, in a couple of seconds, just kind of recap what we covered today? And then don't go away. We've got a little surprise for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Tanya. So I guess just to kind of put everything into the same boat, there's a lot of co-pilots. So definitely look into Microsoft co-pilots because there's plenty of those. They differ from your generic AI functionality. There are different ones for different people in an organization. So knowing, which one may fit with different roles is pretty important. There's been clear impact in the early phases in terms of using this technology. And then there's a lot of opportunity for getting started. You can definitely explore. And I think it's past that point of, I guess, novelty. It's more like this can be used practically within organizations. So definitely get your toes wet because it's a good time for it.
Absolutely. All right. And the future of Copilot, obviously it's a brave new world out there. There definitely are going to be significant impacts to business, almost in the revolutionary area. And it definitely will transform how businesses operate today. So we talked a lot about how it's going to obviously just automate routine tasks, things that you would have admins and, folks doing some pretty mundane things, email summarization, responses, and so on. So that's the basics. Obviously, outcome of that is just more efficient workers, which everybody wants. Will, I know, the enhanced customer service. You want to talk a little bit about the future of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing I would point out there is that as these tools grow, so do our capabilities as people as well. And so kind of that synergy between the evolution of these co-pilot tools with different AI and the humans that are in the loop, whether it's in customer service or whatever the case may be. It's only just going to improve people's ability to do critical thinking, decision making, creative stuff, and just really tap into the stuff that you feel very human doing rather than the mundane typing and data entry and all the stuff that we don't like doing.
Yeah, perfect. And then obviously like streamline project management, like better data analytics, like all of that stuff is going to be optimized with tools like Copilot. Any further thoughts on the future?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. So this is our surprise. We got a little trivia game for you. So we would like to have you guys participate in this little trivia game we're going to go through. So we're going to send a link out, Vonda, in the chat if you can. Oh, wait, no, let me do that for you.
Another thing, could somebody enable the share screen for me so I can share the
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing here.
Also, I have no idea if anybody's played Kahoot before. If you haven't, I'm happy to explain the rules of the game while we're waiting, but just let me know if you need an overview.
I think you should be able to share share your screen while you're an organizer, I think, aren't you?
Right now it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. Rick, are you still on?
Let me just see if I can help as well.
Yeah, hold on. There you go. That should work, Will.
Perfect.
Thank
Yep,
you.
there we go. Looks like I'm locked
Okay.
in.
I will
Okay.
get the link into the chat here for everybody.
If anybody has any questions, please come off mute. You can raise your hand with this wonderful Zoom app. and or just put them in the chat.
Yeah. All right, I'm just getting the link in here.
Can everybody see my screen, by the way?
Yep, it looks good, Will.
Cool.
And if you're using your mobile, we can use your mobile here too. So let me just get this link out to everybody. Okay.
Give everybody a few minutes to jump in. Yeah, you can scan the QR code for putting it on your phone. That might be a bit easier to play the game, but feel free to do whatever works best for you.
Because we want to make learning about Copilot fun. That's the goal here. So this is an example of how you can do it in your organization too. So so we wanted to kind of give everybody an experience here.
Yeah, don't worry. This isn't a evaluation. This is more just to make sure you got something to take away from this.
Yeah.
I'll just give it another second there. Anybody not in the game yet? Oh, there's one more person. All right, let's jump into it. If not, you can put your answer in the chat as well.
And this
So
is
this-
just going to be a couple minutes, and we've got 1 or 2 wrap up slides, and we'll wrap things up. So
Yeah, exactly. So this is a super short quiz. First question, what is a copilot? Hopefully everybody has the answer to this. So make sure to click the tile that represents the answer that you want. Everybody a few seconds to answer here. 5 more seconds. I think we're waiting on a few people to put their answer in. 2 more. All right. Looks like everybody got that answer right. It is an AI assistant embedded in Microsoft applications. So it's awesome. Way to go, everybody. All right. So the other really cool thing about this is it is a little competitive. Right now, Y has the lead. So I guess we'll see where the score takes us. True or false, Copilot and ChatGPT are the same thing. Again, make sure you click the tile that is the answer that you're trying to answer. 10 seconds left. I think we're at 7 replies. A few more to go. All right. It's false. Copilot and ChatGPT are not the same thing because Copilot is an AI assistant embedded in Microsoft applications, and ChatGPT is more generic, more of a thing that you can just use like Google kind of. All right. Tanya seems to hold the lead right now. It is pretty close though, so we'll see where the cookie crumbles with the rest of these questions. The next one, which of the following is not a type of Copilot? So we talked about a lot of different ones, but yeah, look at these ones. Let me know what you think is the one that is not a type of Copilot. A few more answers to go. And just for everybody's knowledge, that picture there was GitHub Copilot, and looks like everybody figured out that personal assistant Copilot is not a thing. So that is really great. So let's see how that changes up the leaderboard here. Tanya's dropped to second, VK with the speedy response time, and JH is on a streak here. So it's getting pretty interesting as we go into the fourth question. There are different copilots for different applications because each application requires tailored AI functionality. Is this true or is this false? So basically, is it true that there are different copilots for different apps because different apps require different copilots? Kind of a tongue twister, but yeah, same thing. Make sure you pick the tile that works the best. There you go. That is correct. Yeah, it is obviously designed so that each application has its own AI functionality. So good job to everybody on that one. And we have Tanya back into first. Looks like Foy has the last 4 correct answers. So way to go, Foy. You're catching up there. Things are pretty close up at the top of the leaderboard. Then we have, why are there different copilots for different roles? So we kind of talked about, the reason that multiple ones exist. So feel free to pick the one that makes the most sense to you. All right, yeah, so you can tailor the Copilot to specific job functionalities. They do make good virtual companions, but they're specifically designed for different roles so that you can tailor their functionality to the job that you do. And so that shakes up the leaderboard a little bit. Looks like we've got a clear-cut number 3, but there's still room for people to make a comeback here. We got 2 questions left to go. So the next one, what are the 3 best practices for launching Copilot initiatives? So this was a specific thing that we talked about a little while ago. So make sure you pick the one that makes the most sense. People a few more seconds here. All right, identify pain points, reinvent the process, reinforce humans in the loop. That is objectives vague and let the magic happen. Just because it's much easier to do it this way. So anyways, let's see how that shakes up the leaderboard. All right, looks like we had a few people moving around. Still pretty tight there at the top. So we'll see who's going to pull away with it. Is it Tanya or VK? Last question, true or false? 77% of early Copilot users don't want to give it up. So this was when we were talking about the impact a little while back. Make sure you're speedy, that's how you get extra points. Answers are coming in. All right, everybody got that one right. That's great. Yeah, definitely everybody that's adopted Copilot so far is having a difficult time letting that go. So with that, we have our top 3. Tanya, drop into number 3 there. And we've got Foy, number 2. And our winner for today's trivia, VK. Congratulations. You didn't win anything. No, or sorry, you didn't win any prizes, but congratulations on, getting all the answers right there.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Will. Okay, let's bring this one home here. That was great. Vanetta, sorry, Vonda, I don't know if there's any questions that we haven't answered in the chat just yet.
Just the odd one or two. Joanne has asked if we can share the presentation, today's presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I think very early on at the start of the chat, Rick, your details, if somebody wants to present, how do they get hold of you? I think SS asked the question. This was right at the top of the chat.
Oh, I didn't think anybody would. No, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Rick McCutcheon. There's 2 of us. The other guy's a massive bodybuilder, and I get mistaken for him a lot in person as well. So
nice problem to have, huh?
All right.
And I'm sure people ask him about CRM all the time. So it's
yeah. And we'll get the link to that nice medallion kind of chart with all the different co-pilots for those groups. So that was the other question.
Yeah, that was another one. Yeah.
Importantly, if anybody wants to hop right in and get some really good guidance, obviously Will is your man. He can certainly get you guys further along the path than a lot of the self-paced that I know that kind of gets in the way of some projects. So here's some information for Will's contact information. Will, thank you so much for downloading your brain to us today. This was really awesome, and I think sets people up for now a comfort level to have these conversations, either be those champions in their firms or comfort level to reach out to clients and say, hey, this is a brave new world. We got to tackle it. So thank you for your time today, Will.
Yeah,
and last but not least is next meetup is June 6th. Our own Nancy Calder is going to take us through a really awesome part of a Microsoft functionality or program called Success by Design. We'll have perhaps a guest speaker talking about that. And then we're going to take a look at Wave 1 2024 review. Again, I always say these are like time permitting. We'd like to pack as much as we can in here, but this last hour and a half just flew by. So that's the goal for June 6th. And then we will put a pause for the summertime and we'll come back in the fall to start up again with the Enterprise Center of Excellence meetups. Please do follow Rick, Nancy, Tanya, myself, and Vonda on LinkedIn. That's where we continue to post all these meetups. The recordings will be on the Dynamics Con YouTube channel. So not only our stuff, but lots of other great content there from the Dynamics Doug group. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the great questions. Thank you for the participation. And we hope you had a great time with us this afternoon. I had a great time. And please help us spread the word. It can only get better. And we're always looking for guest speakers too. So if you have some special sauce and you think it's a good topic for the group, please reach out to us on LinkedIn and we'll talk. All right. Thank you, everybody. That's a wrap for today.
Thanks,
Session
everyone.
done.
Have a good one.